People, Deluded, I'm back again. YouTube's N'Golo Kante. It's been a while since I've said that. That's a real throwback for the early supporters. But yeah, man, here to make another vid. I can't lie, if the thing dies, the battery dies, it's all my fault, because as I do this, my camera is on low bat, so I'm taking that risk. You know, it's a bit like asking David Luiz to stop taking risks on the edge of his own boxing things. You just can't do it. But moving forward, there is some things in relation to Arsenal. Let's start off with actually... Again, paper talk is just paper talk. 98% is nonsense, but it gives me a bit of promise. As you lot know, Mkhitaryan's gone on loan to Romo, and there's a bit of interest, to put it nicely, to keeping him there permanently, and there has been for months. Obviously, in light of what's happened globally, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know our financial situation, let alone... I mean, I swear we reported a 27 million loss, and you know, we're making wage cuts, so we're not in the best of health. But the same could be said for Roma in their own different way. So I don't know if they'll deem that Mkhitaryan is someone they go for, which in terms of longevity, you know, he might be playing well for them. The manager might like him, he might like the manager, but longevity, is it worth taking on his wages and contract at this time in his career? With, if you're pushed for pennies, you might decide to go for someone younger and a bit durable in that sense. But according to Lego, which I probably butchered the pronunciation, sorry my Italian newspaper people them, but apparently according to the newspaper Lego, Italians help me, Roma may try to engineer a swap deal between Henrik Mkhitaryan and Cengiz Ünder. Mkhitaryan wants to stay in Italy, and Roma have thought of two solutions: another year loan deal or a swap to secure Mkhitaryan this summer. I mean, it doesn't make sense to take him on loan again, unless it's a thing where, you know, he was a free transfer, we'll let him go on loan again this season, they take on all of his wages and give us another fee in which we technically get money for him and don't have to deal with his wages. That's fair enough. That I don't advocate that, but I get it. And that's also consistent with, you heard rumours of, you know, not Arsenal, but his agent was trying to get a new deal, so get another extension on his deal, so that obviously it gives them a stronger negotiating position. It would be silly for Arsenal to probably let him go on loan. I mean, if you're getting a decent loan fee, like let's say 3 million, and they take on, keyword, all of his wages, then fair play, that gets someone off the books, and you know, when his year runs, and they get him for a free transfer and twang us. Obviously, we want to see him sold. We heard 1 minute is 15. We want 15, not the 10 million bidded. Again, Arsenal are within their rights to negotiate whatever they want, but I would have taken 10 million because I think Mkhitaryan's a decent player. But you know, between him and Alexis Sanchez, for both teams respectively, it's been the most expensive swap deal, free swap deal in probably Premier League history. It's been an expensive signing, definitely for United, and our case in Mkhitaryan. And Mkhitaryan is, if Arteta wants to use him, fair play. But you know, you'd have Ozil and him and Mustafi and Saka and Aubameyang. Bare man's contract's running out in a year's time, and then you've got to deal with the 2022s. So we need to sell him and get rid. Again, by the flip token of that, you know, if we don't have any money and we can't bring in a creative, apologies for the rain, and bring in a creative midfielder or so, we might deem that, you know, we'll keep Mkhitaryan for the last year of his contract. Arteta might utilise him in some way. Obviously, I keep saying Mkhitaryan's a 10 because he is, to me, that's probably where he can do his best, you know, if he's given a free role, but typically he plays on the flanks. I wouldn't mind Cengiz Ünder. Now, to be fair, I'm sure last season or 2 seasons ago, he had a real standout season. This year, I'm not watching Roma religiously, or know, better yet, know what's, you know, the micro stuff as to why someone's in good form, bad form, manager bust-ups and stuff. I don't know the EastEnders sort of thing with Roma. But, you know, he's made about 15 or so appearances this year, forgive me if I'm wrong, and he's only got 3 goals, which isn't the best. But I like him. We've been linked with him previously. Surely it would make sense to sell him outright and get money for him. Surely they'd be, just because of the age thing, he's 22, and you know, even if he doesn't develop, there's resale potential value there. Surely they'd be shooting themselves in the foot, taking on Mkhitaryan and letting him come on a swap deal to us, because he's younger, you know, he can play on the left wing as well as the right. He gives Arteta something to work with. I wouldn't mind him. The one thing I like about him is he's decent technically, but he does things with energy. I wouldn't mind him. And out of all the penny pinching sort of rumours I've seen, no disrespect to Fraser or Willian, I wouldn't mind Ünder. Willian's a good player and Fraser's okay, so I'm not disrespecting no one. But I can't see this, people. Apparently, apparently 10 million and Mkhitaryan may be enough to sign Cengiz Ünder, who Arsenal have been following for a while. So on one hand, one report says Roma's trying to engineer that one to us. On another, we're trying to do that. And I mean, that would be decent. I think I think he's not, I said if we're going to sign a winger, it should be this super player or potential to be a super player. I don't think he's any of that, but I think he's got potential to complement the side. Again, he's 22, in his early 20s with everybody, and he'd be a decent option, especially in comparison to some of the other names. So I'm fully behind that, to be honest. And 10 million plus getting rid of Mkhitaryan, it's not the biggest fees, and for us it frees up wages that could be used to do other things. So I don't mind him, people. This year he's had injuries, but like I said, 3 goals in 15 appearances. Away from that though, people, and you've heard that allegedly, and this is from the Daily Star, so we'll never know if both teams are interested or if this is actually true, but apparently Ryan Fraser, in the short of it, is leaning towards more of a Spurs sort of move. He wants to go to Spurs. Again, Spurs' actual interest in him, for me, based on the paper talk, has kind of died down. But, if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. I mean, he's got the token of playing under Jose Mourinho. He might not be the Jose of his prime, but he's a hallmark in the Premier League. He's a proven winner. To say he played under a manager like that at 26 years of age might be an opportunity not to turn down. Obviously, Spurs are 9 times out of 10 in the Champions League. So there's that aspect. Obviously, the prospect of moving to London in both team situations probably gives them something. And you look at Spurs, there might be a lot of game time for him to get, because they probably need a couple more options to rotate in the side and whatnot, and need stuff, and that might be something he's interested in. He's interested in helping Spurs, get back to what they was a couple of years ago under Poch and potentially winning a title. Touch wood, we hope that never happens. For Arsenal, I wouldn't have minded Fraser. Like I said in the previous video, I'm not going to cry if he gets signed. I don't think we should have went for him. I don't really see how he's going to benefit the team beyond being a squad player. Yeah, I know he's had that one standout season, and he is a decent player. And almost what I'm saying in relation to Cengiz applies to Fraser. But I just think, at 26 weeks, if we're going to bring in players, and it makes me sound like a hypocrite. In fact, it does. We've got to get better than what we have. And like I said, Fraser isn't going to be anything other than a squad player. I'd love him to come, prove me wrong, and become a main part player. I'd support him all the way. But I'm not going to lose sleep is what I'm saying over this. But apparently, Arsenal suffer transfer U-turn as Ryan Fraser tells pals he wants Tottenham move. He's set to snub a move to Arsenal in favour of joining their North London rivals. So we'll never know if either team's interested. We'll never know if Spurs are more interested in Arsenal. We'll never know if Arsenal are more interested than Spurs and he still went to Spurs. We'll never know. All I know is that this article writes itself in a time when there's no real headlines. You put Arsenal and Spurs together in a sentence and say a player turns down former Premier League winners for a team that's never won it despite being more successful in terms of league positions than us. The article sells itself. Spurs had to be cheeky, man. I ain't got nothing else. But I wouldn't mind Fraser, but I'm not going to lose any sleep particularly over that myself, people. We already know Arsenal's financial situation is delicate, and I've more or less covered this already, but the Standard Sport have said in a weekly call with Arsenal's non-playing staff, which is anything from Arteta up to Raul Sanllehi and Vinay, in a weekly call with club's non-playing staff, Arsenal head of football Raul Sanllehi has told club staff not to expect big spending on transfers in the wake of the COVID crisis. Now, this was said last year. Small hope that that's not the case. I don't really care for price fees. I just want us to buy correctly. But you look at Arsenal's financial situations. We're turning over a loss. We're feeling the pinch of not being in the Champions League. Obviously, getting to the final of the Europa League doesn't bring you more than getting to the group stages. So you can imagine what we got is pennies for our elimination at this period this year. Obviously, you look at our wage bill and what's been made of it. We're in a very difficult situation, and we're here because of years of mismanagement on the field. Direct consequences of failing on the field have impacted off the field. What we've done off the field has had direct consequences of on the field. What I mean by that is we failed to produce the goods on the field. We're not in the Champions League, so we're losing money and things. And we know as a club we're big on self-sustainability, and we've not got gate receipts coming in. It's even bigger. Off the field, we've paid for it. I don't want to just you can talk about the transfers we should have done and got over the line, scouts, contracts, nipping them in the bud, letting Ramsey go for free. These have had direct consequences for what you do on the field, because we could have got 90 million or so for Alexis allegedly. What could that have been invested to do? You could have got 40 or so for Ramsey. What could that have done for you? Do you get it, people? And obviously with the many young players. So we're here because of years of mismanagement, and it's exaggerated even more because sadly of this unpredictable global epidemic that no one saw coming. But it is what it is. He's told us not to expect signings, and he's explicit big signings, and has explicitly played down the prospect of expensive signings in the coming window. Now that's subjective, because Pepe is an expensive signing, and it will be. It's 70 million in total, people. But at the same time, you could say that was inexpensive in terms of upfront payment. So there's small hope we can do things like that. But who knows? You hear this is obviously consistent with what you've heard of. Arsenal are looking at swap deals and free transfers and all of these sort of things. So we'll have to see, man, because we're in a pinch in terms of contract renewals for Aubameyang and Saka. We're in a difficult situation. In terms of incomings, we're in a difficult situation. So we'll have to see what happens in that regards, people. ESPN have said, again, harping on the Ozil thing, and says Ozil is yet to be offered an extension, even on reduced terms. He was free to leave last year, but no club could match his salary. It feels as if Arsenal and Ozil have reached a point where their association is no longer mutually beneficial. Now, I mean, to be honest, on the field, Ozil is not as terrible as people make out, but we know he probably needs to be moved on. We need to rebuild. I wouldn't say it's not beneficial, because Arsenal, in terms of marketing, are benefiting greatly from Ozil, and Ozil likewise. Clearly, financially, Ozil shouldn't be given a new deal unless it's dramatically reduced terms. He clearly this was always going to be his last deal, his last period in London, assuming he leaves Arsenal and does other things. You know, he's always linked with Fenerbahce. He's always linked with moves to America. These are things he'd have to consider. He's had a terrific career. I think he's been a success at Arsenal if you look at it and you consider all the factors. But he needs to be moved on. So it's really something of nothing. I mean, if Arsenal were to give him a renewal, it'd be silly. If Ozil was playing like Aubameyang, or, you know, doing PFA Player of the Year sort of stuff, or moving like David Silva in the last couple of years, you could understand an extension. But it's common sense that Ozil needs to keep it moving. Nobody gave us the deal but Ozil. I mean, they chose to give Ozil the deal, so they can't blame anyone but themselves. I don't necessarily mock the signing of Ozil on that big contract, because at the time people were saying Ozil and Alexis have to sign new deals. What would it scream to the club and the fans if both leave? Obviously, in hindsight, Alexis was dead set on going and Ozil was there. And I mean, Wenger had a lot of critics, but it is there, public knowledge, that he didn't want Ozil to be signed on these terms as well as Alexis. So fans would have probably went into ballistic mode if both went, but you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So I can't see that this is anything new. I mean, giving Ozil a new deal would be silly. We need to rebuild, and we need to look to move on players that are on the wrong side of 30, unless they're doing what Aubameyang's doing. Finally, and I knew the Lucas Torreira is happy at Arsenal and they don't want to sell in links with it last. Reports coming out of Italy again, same old tired rumour. AC Milan are linked with Torreira. We know allegedly at times some people said he's not happy and he'd relish a return back to Italy. Obviously they've got Ivan Gazidis, so we'll have to see. Now we previously heard that, you know, AC Milan are in a difficult financial spot anyways, and because of this COVID thing even more. So will they have 40 million or so that Arsenal would probably expect to command if Torreira is to be sold and return back to Italy? Apparently he gave his yes to Milan in 2018 when they were interested, and obviously it's AC Milan, people, so there's big enough reasons to entice any player regardless of where they are now, because they're historically a big club. But in relation to Arsenal, I don't think there's anything else to cover, people. Let me do a little quick type in Google and see what comes up. No, there's nothing really and truly, people, so I'm going to get out of here. Why waste any more of your time? On that note, people, deluded, I'm out.